Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I'm so excited to be back with all of you for another episode of the podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands and artists like Caroline. Also, check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR Outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAR. So, we have today from Nashville by way of Austin and by way of San Antonio, Texas, Caroline Hale. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Caroline, so you have had quite an adventurous and busy last 3 days. Why don't you tell the audience what has kept you busy the past 3 days?
So I have been moving from Austin to Nashville, and I'm finally, after these 3 days, I'm finally feeling settled. The process of moving is crazy, and you feel like you're like, oh, I forgot about that. Let me go do that. And then you get back and you're like, oh, I should have gotten this also. So it's been a little discombobulating, but it's all good change.
So, I mean, obviously you've just gotten into town, but any like first impressions about Nashville that kind of caught your eye already?
Um, Immediately the weather is fantastic. It was like a high of 80 degrees when I pulled into town the other day, and that for fellow Texans, that's insane for this time of year. So I'm happy to be here, not in Austin or San Antonio for that aspect. Um, and other than that, I mean, so far the people were super friendly, super excited to get to know you. Just overall great first impressions.
So, did you have a lot of support then in this move then, or did you kind of do this on your own?
I did. I had a lot of support. My parents and my family are my number one fans, first and foremost, which is very rare, and I'm very grateful for that. But I've had a lot of support from them and also my manager, Tom Gimble. And yeah.
So is mom or dad or any siblings also musical, or are you the loner in the group?
Well, so I'm the oldest of two younger siblings, and my sister can play beautiful classical piano. But my parents were, I mean, my mom was a little musical. She played the flute back in like middle school or something. But they both just love music, and you can look at somebody and watch them listen to a song and see how their entire disposition can change. I mean, that's how heavily they feel music. So they love it.
Favorite song off the BFF album?
Do they have a favorite song?
Yeah.
Ooh, my dad's, I think, is Real Love because I wrote that song when I was 14. I'm 22 now. And he was sitting at the piano with me as I was writing that song. And so that's his favorite. And for my mom, she goes back and forth on several of them, but I'm gonna say something now and then I'm gonna get a text later and be like, that wasn't my favorite song. But it's probably, I'm gonna say Something to Believe in is gonna be my guess.
It's funny that you bring up that song because I feel like that is such a popular song title,
It
Something to
is.
Believe in. Obviously Poison is the one that, comes to me right in mind. And then an artist that we saw at South by, his name's JJ Shiplett. He has a song like that. What was the inspiration behind that song in particular?
Yeah, so that's funny that you asked that. I Something to Believe in was the first real song that I ever wrote. I was also 14 at that time. Um, and I was with my mentor, Martin Strayer, and he had come up with the guitar riff, the dun 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 boom. And it was at the end of our time together, and he was like, "Go home, mess around with this, see if you can come up with anything." Um, and it just kind of came right out of me. It was one of those songs that just happened and you barely touched it afterwards, and that it's beautiful.
So you touched on Martin.
Mhm.
Martin obviously has been a huge and integral part of your career so far. Obviously, your young career.
Yes.
Talk to the audience about him himself and how he did kind of
Yeah,
guide you through this process.
absolutely. So, for those of you who don't know, Martin Strayer is an engineer. He's done front of house for huge acts, including Soundgarden, Madonna, Ariana Grande, The Chicks, um, far and wide in between. And he is from not from San Antonio, but has lived there for the past 15 years maybe. And he's married to Emily Strayer, who is a part of the Chicks. And needless to say, it's a very musical household. And Emily has a daughter named Juliana, and her and I were in the same kind of rock stage camp where you'd go to guitar summer camp and they'd put you in a band and then you learn a bunch of songs and then you perform them at the showcase and all the parents come. And my parents kind of were friends with Emily and Martin prior to this, but I was so young, I didn't really, it's just my parents' friends or something.
Yeah.
So you overlook that. But Martin saw me play, we played Crazy on You by heart, and I played the guitar. And he saw that and kind of was like, I want you to come practice with me. I want to mentor you and teach you what I know and how I know how to do this. And it all started from there.
At 14.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So most 14-year-old girls are thinking about that's eighth grade, that's middle
Yeah.
school, right? That's acne, that's boyfriends, that's,
Yeah.
like, and you're starting a music career. Like when I say that, like what does that, how do you feel about that?
I know it sounds crazy, but like even when I was younger than that, I'd been dreaming of doing this. And like my mom has all these stories about before I'd go in and tell her goodnight, I'd always be like, "Hey, like, have you thought any more about, getting a tour bus or anything like that? Like we can go on the road." And she's like, "I love that idea, blah blah blah." And they obviously my parents have been so supportive of this since day one, but I've wanted to pursue this passion of mine for as long as I could remember. So that really doesn't sound that crazy, but I can understand from an outside perspective how that would.
Yeah, you're just living in it, so it
Yeah,
seems normal to you.
yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about San Antonio. Growing
Yeah.
up in San Antonio, how was school life? Did you have a lot of like how was your circle of friends? Like, was everybody into the same kind of music? What kind of music were you into growing up? Like,
Yeah.
give us a little taste of how, what San Antonio life was like.
San Antonio, I love San Antonio. I think it's a great pace. It's a great place to raise a family because of, it's not like you're in a huge city. Um, I lived in a great neighborhood, went to great schools, had amazing friends, and none of them were really super musical. I mean, they all loved music. But that we didn't really have that in common necessarily. It was kind of always like, oh, she likes music, she's a musician, that's her thing. Um, but in terms of music that we would listen to, most of it was everything off of the radio at that point. A bunch of pop music. Um, of course, being in San Antonio, you listen to country music. That's kind of inserted into your veins. Um, and then, my friends and I, our parents had very similar tastes, in the sense of like classic rock and Americana and folk and blues. So a lot of that influence was there for sure. But it really was a huge array. It was everything. We didn't dislike or push aside anything in particular. We loved it all.
So I kind of noticed on most of BFF that a lot of the themes are, love and heartbreak and obviously relationships. Do you did you try to harken back to any like childhood memories for lyrics or for inspiration for songs?
I'm sure I did, yeah. A lot of that really songwriting at that stage for me was just about getting it onto a piece of paper because it was easier for me to do that and say what how I was feeling that way than it was, to be in a conversation with somebody. Which I know is how a lot of musicians kind of start out and figure out, oh, I like this this way of professing my feelings. But yeah, I'd say it was an outlet.
So as a songwriter now and as you're writing songs, for whatever next project you have, do you feel like your style of writing and the process has changed for you?
I think just in general, it's matured. Um, if anything, I think the process is pretty similar to how I've always done it. I always start with music. That's the number one thing. Because I started playing guitar when I was about 8 years old. So music, that part for me is really what I gravitate towards. And if I find something interesting on the guitar, or the piano, or the bass, or whatever that speaks to me, it's easier for me to put my thoughts and feelings on top of that when I can feel the music already has a sense of its own already. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you prefer playing electric guitar or acoustic guitar?
I write the majority of my stuff on acoustic. Um, but I mean, I love the electric too. That's a whole other realm for me. I grew up learning like heavy rock stuff, which is so funny. Like Metallica and Led Zeppelin, tons of the Beatles and the Eagles and just all the, the greats.
Yeah, anything that was named after an animal, right? You're
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so is Martin then continuing to work with you, or like what is your current relationship like? How is that going like from a work process?
He has always been there for me.
Okay.
Obviously, when I left for college, we couldn't do our weekly lessons anymore, but we continued to stay in touch, and I was always sending him stuff and asking him for his advice. Um, and I have a project I'm working on right now, and I've been texting with him today, actually, just going back and forth about his feedback and everything. But he's also, I mean, he has a family and he's also extremely busy. He's on the road with Casey Musgraves right now, which is badass.
She is just like, what adjectives do you describe for her?
Oh my gosh. Out of this world.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's like she just is she's amazing. She's one of my biggest influences as an artist, musician.
Yeah, she's one of the types too that like she is like critically loved as well
Mhm.
as like massively audience loved too. Like she can
Yeah.
sell out arenas, like that doesn't usually happen. Usually an artist is like either one or the other. Like, they're critically acclaimed, but they're just like an indie band, or they're
Totally.
like, selling out stadiums and they're not very good,
Yeah. She can do it all for sure.
You can do it all. Are you a fan of Pink?
I am. I mean, I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm super well versed in all of her material, but I mean, she was huge when I was young and listening to the radio. I mean, she was all over pop radio and rock radio. Um, but yeah, I think she's awesome.
She does kind of cross genres, doesn't she?
Totally, she does. And she
So
doesn't do that intentionally, which is awesome too. Like she just does it because that's what comes out of her.
it is kind of special. You're right. So
Yeah.
let's talk about college. That's obviously, I have two, my two oldest just graduated high school as well. So like,
Okay.
one is going to college, that whole process.
That's
Talk about that process for you and your family. Like, did you have a lot of options? Like what made you decide to go to University of Texas?
um oh man, I can feel like your household right now. Is it just feel like it's on fire? I mean, when I was applying and getting ready to go to college, I felt like it was crazy, but I was really in between a few state schools in Texas, so UT, A&M, mainly those are the two, which is funny. And then Berklee College of Music up in Boston. Um, I had received a pretty awesome scholarship from there, but my senior year of high school is when COVID hit. And so that really threw things off. And I knew I always wanted to do music, but I also wanted to live life not within the shelter of a strictly musical college. And also at that time, I was kind of scared of being stuck in a dorm room in Boston for who knows how long. And I mean, I'm from Texas. I'm not used to Boston. So I think at the end of the day, I chose UT because it seemed like the smartest decision at that point in time. And my parent, I told myself I can always go back to Berkeley, once stuff clears up and all of that. But I found my place at UT, and I'm really happy that I did.
So you're going through COVID just like all of us. But as a musician, I've talked to so many bands that, either were just starting out during, COVID time, or like they were, obviously like seasoned veterans at that point. How, like, what level of fear did you have that you weren't going to be able to do what you wanted to do as a career?
I think at that point in time for me, it really wasn't much of a career yet. I hadn't really built anything. I knew I loved it, and I knew I had a handful of a bunch of songs that I loved. I knew that, but at that time, I was just more so like, okay, I need to get into college. I need to go to college and finish it, start it, finish it, whatever. Um, so I'm grateful in that sense that I didn't have a career that was on the line and needing to support myself in that aspect. But I do feel for those musicians, and I know that a lot has happened because of that.
Yeah, and mostly negative, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know, but also some great stuff too. So
Yes. What negativity breeds, amazing creativity, and that definitely has happened. So let's talk about some specific songs. I want to talk about, frankly speaking, I'm Done, because that was one of your first singles, and we'll get into like why we did both singles at the same time. But I want to talk about this song in particular. You said it was about an ex who cheated with a friend.
mhm.
And when I listen to this song, just like I listened to all of your songs, it is a real testament to you. I just get lost in the music. Like,
Oh, thank
like
you.
I can listen to the entire BFF album, and if you told me it was track 10 or track 3, I wouldn't know the difference. Like there's just something about like your voice and just the style of music. Like I just get lost in it, and
Thank
that's a really really
I
testament to
really
you.
appreciate that. Because I do also, and I love how, music is able to take us on that kind of journey. But
Yeah. So there are three artists that I think of when I hear this song, and I want your take on to see if I'm crazy or if I'm like, I'm on the same point here.
okay.
So the first artist I think of with this song is Alanis Morissette. But
Yeah,
like,
I've heard that.
like acoustic, like, kind of mellow, Alanis, not you ought to know Alanis, right?
Yes, yes.
The other artist is Avril Lavigne, because
I
there's a little bit of like punkiness to it. There's a little bit of attitude, right?
Absolutely.
And then the last one that I'm really like gotten into the past like year is Olivia Rodrigo. Like
Yeah,
she is fantastic. And I
phenomenal.
hear a lot of you in those three artists. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. 100%. Totally. I couldn't have said it better myself, and I'm flattered. Thank you.
Good. All right. So I'm doing something right.
Yeah, totally.
The other, obviously I want to hear the like about that song and how that song came about.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was my first year of college, and broken up with my boyfriend of all of high school, whatever. And then he's a year older than me, and I'm off at college for the first time. He's a sophomore. And long story short, I heard that he's been, kind of off and messing around with one of my best friends. And no one bothered to tell me. Even after I'd been, continuing to talk to him and keep a relationship going with him. And that just crushed me. Especially, he was for sure my first love, my first, just real boyfriend. And I think everyone can look back at that point in their lives and be like, oh, I remember that. Um, and I just needed to say something. And I, wanted to be somewhat of a bigger person and not, keep going back to them and being like, oh, I hate you and all that stuff. So it's like, might as well just put it all in a song and they can listen to it or not listen to it if they want. And I went and picked up my guitar one day, and originally it was only about a 50-second song. I was thinking it was going to be kind of like an interlude or something.
Okay.
And I brought that to Gordy when we were, putting together the first album, and he's like, you need to I love this. You need to finish it. And I was like, really? Like, I think this is so much poppier, than I've really ever experimented with. It was so out of my comfort zone, but I think that's why it stands out on the record, because it was out of my comfort zone. Everything about it is out of my comfort zone. But yeah, it just came right out, and I think it needed to.
So the other song then, and then well, actually, and before we get to the other song, talk
Yeah.
about the process of wanting to release both of these songs on the same day.
Yeah, so I think I've had the majority of these songs, like I've said, for years and years and years. And I've been, playing out in Austin, and people are like, where's your music? Like, you have all these amazing songs. Where is it? And I'm like, it's coming. I promise it's coming. Um, and I think we just wanted to give whoever is out there listening a snippet of the wide array of styles that I can offer. Um, it definitely is a very interesting move, but it also was, first ever release. But I think it gave everyone a little tidbit of what is coming.
So I've had many artists who told me after their first release, whether it's the first song, single, or album or whatever, they tell you, and I'm sure you've heard this before, like up until they're released into the world, they're yours.
Yeah.
And then once you release them, they're not yours anymore, they're everyone else's. When I say that, what does that mean to you?
Oh, that just shoots me like immediately back to the weeks before we released those two songs, especially those two, being the two singles. But they're just both so vulnerable in their unique ways. Um, and so I 100% can resonate with that. It was super scary. I was like, what if people like hate this and are never going to listen to it and just will hate me because of it? Like, but once they were released, it was a huge sense of self, almost kind of like you feel at ease.
So did Gordy kind of give you that confidence in the writing process, or had you kind of already had it and it was just more of him like giving you that urge, I guess?
It So I, had the songs, and we got together for a day of pre-production, and we kind of messed around with Something to Believe In is a great example, actually. It was structurally pretty different than what it is right now on the studio album. And he just created this sense of more of a journey in that song than it was originally. So he did absolutely help me, make these songs be what they could be. And yeah, I mean, he has been the biggest guiding light in this whole process for me, for sure.
So the other single, obviously we'd be not remiss to talk about it, but it's called We Both Do. And again, about a long distance relationship that you had. So this was after then the first boyfriend, correct? Like chronologically, we're talking?
It's actually about the same boyfriend.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So any different story then, or just kind of,
So this I wrote We Both Do, obviously before Frankly Speaking,
yeah.
chronologically speaking, but I wrote that when he went off to college and I was still stuck in high school and we were, trying to do this long distance relationship thing. Um I think anyone who has done that knows the struggle of having to communicate in a way that's so different from communicating in person constantly when you're with each other. Um, and yeah,
So
so
what lessons can you kind of take like for like, if you end up being on tour for 3 or 4 months from like whatever significant other or family that you have at that time, like what lessons can you take from those experiences?
oh gosh, I would if I could go back to my younger self. Yes, I'm very, very grateful for that relationship. I think I would still tell her, maybe long distance at your age isn't the smartest idea. For some, it's worked great, but it also, depends on the relationship. But I think, you know, now with age and growing up, you learn how to communicate better and you know, understand your your partner better and all that stuff. So I mean there's no telling. I haven't been in a long distance relationship since then, so I don't know.
You're like, I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah, I'm really, really trying.
So, what do we have for shows for the rest of the? I know you're playing Thursday night at the Long Center, which is super exciting for obviously people who've not been to Austin. Tell everyone what the Long Center means to the town of Austin.
Oh, I mean, I think not only is it like an architectural staple of the city, but I mean, you go there and see fantastic shows. It just is a premium venue in that town, and it brings a lot of awesome music lovers into that town. So I'm really, really excited.
And then what about shows then July, August? Do we have anything lined up or?
I do not as of right now. I'm kind of, hoping to really immerse myself in this Nashville scene, which we're working on some dates. So hopefully I will have more to announce a little later. But yeah.
So let's talk about the move to Nashville. Obviously, musically focused, correct? Or
Yeah.
were there other decisions involved in that move?
This is a 100% music motivated move. And so my manager has been pushing for me to explore Nashville just in general ever since we started working together, um, because of Nashville's unique songwriting community. And at the end of the day, I'm a songwriter first and foremost. That's the aspect of artistry that I love the most. And Austin has a great scene for that, but I wouldn't even compare it to Nashville. Um, and so I'm really here to write a bunch of songs, meet a bunch of people, um, get to experience this town for what it has to offer, and come back with a handful of great songs, hopefully for a new project.
And so when you told Martin that you were going to Nashville, what was his reaction?
He was so excited. He's like, "Oh, that's so awesome! Like that's where you need to be." Blah blah blah, and just I'm gonna set you up with so and so, and you're gonna have the best time. Needless to say, he was very excited.
Well, I've only been there once, and it was in 2019 on our way back from New Orleans.
Okay.
Um, which, if you never, I'm sure you've been to New Orleans before.
Yes, I have, unfortunately.
Oh, you didn't like New Orleans?
I I loved it. I went for Mardi Gras when I was in college, and I ran into my ex-boyfriend. So that was a little bit of a bump in the road. But yes, I love New Orleans. No hate on the city, just that horrible weekend for me.
So it in college you decided to go to Mardi Gras in New Orleans.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's okay. Yeah, that's I gotta give you props for that. Hopefully with a group of people, right?
Yes, yes, thank goodness. Oh my gosh, I wouldn't have survived that weekend if I wasn't with my friends.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I find that like every time I go to, because we were actually I was just in New Orleans at the end of April. Um, I just find that every time I go there, there's just something new that I discover or somewhere that it's just the people are so nice, the conversations you have, the food. It's just there's something about
Absolutely.
that city that's just amazing.
I know. I need to go back and revisit it. I've only been there like once was on a college visit and the other time was for that Mardi Gras. So I need to go back.
Yeah, and don't meet the ex next time, right?
Yeah, no, I won't.
So let's talk about one of our mutual friends, the West Texas Exiles you got to play with at, again, one of the iconic venues in Austin, the Continental Club. Was that the first time you played the Continental then?
That was not. That was my second time. I had played the Continental once before, um, when 2 years ago, my junior year of college. And I closed the night out for Nightcap. Do you know the local Austin band Nightcap? They're great.
No, I
Could
don't.
They're awesome. Kind
Okay.
of indie rock alternative band. Um, and so we had that like midnight slot, my band and I did, but regardless, it was so much fun. That room just demands a presence, you know?
It really does. There's you can feel the history when you walk
Oh
into the
yeah,
place. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So let's talk about the band. How did we get this band together and how did we meet everybody?
Yeah, so I've shuffled through quite a lot of, or not too many, but a few players on each instrument. But originally I give all the credit to finding this band to Gordy. He, he's taken me under his wing completely and has helped me with literally every aspect of my professional artist career. And building the band was a huge one. So originally I was playing with a few of the Heathens players, Trevor on keys and Clint on the drums. I'm actually playing with both of them on Thursday, which will be awesome. Um, and then, as time goes by, they're obviously insanely busy, so I can't count on them as a constant. But I was interning at the studio, 2 summers ago, just helping Gordy out and running errands and doing all that stuff. And an amazing artist named David Jimenez, he also goes by the last Jimenez. He's a local Austin guy,
Okay.
was in there recording his debut full-length album. It's not out yet, but I got to sit in and experience everything that this guy was recording, and it just is. I mean, he's, in my opinion, he's the best guitar player in Austin, Texas, and other people will also tell you that, I'm sure. But anyways, I got to hang around him for about a week in his amazing, awesome band. And I was sitting on my phone and I got a text, and my band had fallen through for a specific gig. And I was like, oh man, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I need to find all new players for this, gig, whatever. And David's sitting right there and he's like, well, I'll play for you. And then I was like, well, okay, I need to find a drummer, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, I'm in a studio full of them. Why don't you just ask him? And so that's kind of how my current band came to be.
So cool. Okay. So it's a four-piece plus five-piece then total?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got lead guitar, drums, bass, keys, and then myself.
So let's talk about social media for a second, because that is obviously a huge, huge part of an artist's development, how far and how high they go. What's your, opinion and stance on social media strictly as a musician?
Um, I think that social media as a musician is amazing and it can do absolutely amazing things, if everything in the universe goes right. And you get, some viral video and then your life has changed like that. Um, but it's a lot of work, you need to really focus on creating the image that you want a stranger to see on their phone and be like, ooh, that looks interesting. Let me click that. I personally have never, like, I was one of those kids that their parents didn't let have social media until they were like awkwardly old. So I was never, and I was okay with that. I was fine with that. Like all my friends had it, but so I just would go on theirs. But I never really felt the need to be a part of it, super strongly. But I got older and then joined everything. So I never really was super savvy on it. And then I started putting music out, and that's a huge piece of it. It really is. Whether you love it or hate it, but you got to go with the flow and make the most of it. Like after a long time of messing with it, I've learned that there's some really awesome aspects to it that can be fun for myself.
So covers that either you have played live or covers that you've done just like you doodling around, like, in your house or whatever. Like, give me a cover that you really, really love to play.
Um, Angel from Montgomery. I think that's a huge one for me. Um, Slow Burn, Casey Musgraves. What else do we play? Well, Natural High on my record is a
Yeah,
Merle
talk
Haggard.
about that. Let's talk about that because that was your only cover on the album. Why that song and who is the artist? I wasn't
Merle
familiar with it.
Haggard. It's a Merle Haggard song. So I know it's so random, but I was in high school. My aunt and uncle were getting married, and my aunt came to me before the rehearsal dinner and was like, "Can you play our favorite song for us? It'll be super special." And I was like, "Sure, I've never heard of it, but I'll do it." So I went back and practiced it and tried to figure out Merle Haggard's tone of voice and everything. I was like, "Okay, I know I can't sing like Merle Haggard, so I'm going to make this like my own." And I performed it that night in front of friends and family, and it just really struck a chord. And even for me, I kind of looked up and was like, "Whoa, that was powerful." Um, and I ever since then, I really couldn't get away from it. People would always ask me about when are you gonna do your own version of this song. Um, and on top of that, I also think it's one of the most beautiful love songs I've ever heard. So I definitely have a connection with it, and so decided to throw it on there.
So have you heard from like Merle's representatives like that they
Um,
like the song or
I haven't, but I would love to.
okay. I have
Love
to
to
get
hear from
Tom on
him.
that.
Yeah, I know. Seriously, actually, that's a good idea. I'll ask him about it.
So I got to meet Tom as well because he manages Lamont Landers.
Yes,
And so I met Tom at South by, a really, really nice guy. So you definitely have someone that's in your corner. And in this business, that's not always the truth, or not always the
absolutely.
case.
I'm so grateful to be a part of that management family and to have Tom in my life for sure.
So Nashville, what do we got going on this weekend? Any big plans? Father's Day is upon us. Obviously, you're going to be in Austin Thursday. So are you heading back then, or are you going to be there for the weekend?
So actually, I do have some big Father's Day plans. So obviously, show in Austin on Thursday. And then I surprised my dad with some tickets to go see Dead and Co. at the Sphere. So we're going to Las Vegas.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I've never been to Vegas before, so I'm really excited about that. I'm,
Yeah.
22, so I'm actually able to partake in the festivities of things. But I'm excited to go experience that with him, especially, there's a big difference. It's like having the option to go on a family vacation with your family and a family vacation with your friends. Both of them are great in their unique ways, but if you really want to get the most out of it, you go with your family. So I'm excited.
That's well said. Yeah, that's well said. So the Sphere is just, I mean, I'm a big Fish fan, so like we saw some of that. Like you two, obviously, I mean, it's going to be like you're just going to be mind blown.
I know. I'm trying to mentally prepare myself, but I don't think I can. I think I'm just gonna get there and look at it and be like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing.
Mm. That's so
This is
cool.
where you need to start aiming.
Yeah. So you're going to the Saturday night show then, or the Sunday night show?
Saturday night.
Saturday.
Yeah.
And then back on Monday then, or
Yep. Or no, fly back here Sunday.
Sunday? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Well,
quick.
yeah, that's you're gonna have so much fun. I cannot wait to hear. I might have to message you and find out.
Ooh, totally.
Yeah.
I'll send you
Or
pictures and everything.
yes, that would be great.
Definitely worth an Instagram post for sure.
Yeah. We can live vicariously through you, right?
Absolutely. Anyone's welcome.
Well, Caroline, this has been such a pleasure. I hope it's been as painless as it has been for me.
Yeah,
So,
it's been awesome. Thank you again so much for having me. I love what you do.
well, I appreciate that. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, our social media pages. That helps us. That helps the bands and artists like Caroline. Don't forget to check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters, RAWR, outfitters.com. Don't just wear RAR. And like always, I've been Dog. You've been great. This is the Music Lab Podcast.